All right, everyone, welcome in to episode 42 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is being recorded on September 22nd, 2022. I'm Nicholas Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gustavo Tomazeli. And he's popped up here. Second, there he is to the left of me on the screen. Gus, how are you doing here? Obviously, here in Tennessee, we are in anticipation. We are in wait for what
Oh,
is a huge weekend.
Brazil is a rainy week and it's kind of boring in terms of sports. Only one fan base is kind of excited, and I'm gonna get through that on Brazilian segment. But I imagine Knoxville, I bet is like you know, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I'm mad. It's like I lived in Knoxville for 7 years. Why something like this only happens when I left? Why? I felt personal. It felt personal, but there's people even gathering for college game day since today. I saw like since like early morning, but I imagine the hype is high, and that's what big games are for. That's like derbies are for. I imagine, for example, it compares like the 2002 Paulista Championship and Rio Branco and União Barbarense played kind of for the Paulista Championship, and there was people waiting the day before. So I imagine the anticipation. I think, and I want to get to that. Like, is this the biggest Tennessee Florida game in the century, or kind of is too much to say that?
Okay. So, all right. So it's definitely not the biggest of the century. The biggest Tennessee Florida game of the century was 2001. Because
Yeah,
we have to go back and just if you're not familiar with the 2001 Tennessee Florida game. So of course that year, if you're familiar with the Tennessee Florida rivalry, normally we play it mid to late September. Of course, in 2001, 9/11 happens the week before Tennessee is supposed to travel to Florida. So that game gets postponed to the end of the year in early December. And it turns out, that game in 2001 was number 4 Tennessee at number 2 Florida. And it ended up being for the SEC East Championship. Tennessee, despite being a top 5 team, goes into that game 26-point underdogs and comes out with the victory. And they go to the SEC title game and they ended up losing to Nick Saban's LSU Tigers. And of course, that kind of started Nick Saban's run as as probably the greatest college football coach of all time. But still, Tennessee had to beat Florida to get to that point. And if Tennessee had defeated LSU the next week, Tennessee would have been playing the 2001 Miami Hurricanes for the national championship. So that clearly was the biggest of the century. But in terms of where the Tennessee program is today, this is easily the most important game we have played since 2016, since the 2016 Florida game, like the
I
2016.
say even more. I say even more than that, because I think 2016 there was a lot of there were a lot of hype, but it was kind of Tennessee already beat Georgia the year before that was ranked. It was coming off. I feel like this game, if Tennessee won, was the fastest turnaround and the fastest hype back. Getting your hype, getting your excitement back. Because if you remember, a year and a half ago, everything seems lost. Everything seems destroyed. We were both at the Tennessee Florida game last not last season, the season before, and we saw how disparate, how big the difference was, and now it's even closer.
Yeah, and then we saw the program disintegrate because I remember I was there at the Texas A&M game after that, and Tennessee couldn't even muster up like 30 offensive plays in that game. And of course, Pruitt gets fired. We have 26 players transfer out, and I thought we both basically thought that the program was going to be done for a while. We were going to be in a rebuilding mode. There wasn't going to be much competitiveness, and the fact that we have gotten to the point where Tennessee is on the verge of being a top 10 team. I mean, you realize if Tennessee wins this week, we're going to be in the top 10, which is just absolutely insane to me that we've managed to do this in 16 games. That's all Heupel's coached here. You had the 13 from last year plus 3 this year. I mean, this is only his 17th game on Rocky Top, and already we're on the verge of being a top 10 team. And that is an absolutely remarkable turnaround. Comparing this to 2016, I think you have to compare how both teams started Because remember, in 2016, Tennessee goes into the season ranked number 9 and has to escape Appalachian State in overtime. So I think a lot of people, after the game, like, okay, this team's probably not as good as we thought they were. Then, of course, they go to the Battle of Bristol. Virginia Tech goes up 14-0. And, of course, they turn it on, partially because Virginia Tech fumbled the ball 6 times in that game. But something was just never right for that 2016 team from the beginning. Like the week after the Virginia Tech and before Florida was the Ohio Bobcats. And I remember in that game, we were only up a possession in the fourth quarter. Like, that team was not very dominant. I would argue the 2015 team was better outside of the fact that they just couldn't finish big games. The 2015 was more dominant against bad teams. But I think that starting 2016, even though the Florida game was super hyped up, and of course that was the last time College Game Day was in Knoxville, I do think that in comparison, this team, if you look at the way they perform, of course they annihilated the two bad teams, Ball State and Akron, and then they went on the road and got a win over a top 25 opponent. And really, in a fashion we didn't expect them to get it in. And of course, I just think that the feeling is different. I think this team has endeared themselves. The team has given the fan base a lot of life and a lot of hope. And I think also, too, fans can sense that this Florida team is for the taking. Anthony Richardson, I know they beat Utah in week 1, and people are starting to talk about Anthony Richardson as a Heisman candidate. But we got to remember, this guy has not thrown a single touchdown pass. He has done all of his damage on the ground. And I don't think they're going to be able to get away with that in Neyland Stadium. Because I don't believe Anthony Richardson even started a game on the road. And he's going to have to start a game on the road in the most hostile environment he's going to face, ever, as a starter anywhere. Because Neyland Stadium this week is good. If you thought the Ole Miss game last year was crazy in terms of atmosphere, this will top that. This is going to be an absolute. It's going to be 102,000 people. Well, I guess it's 101,915 now. People looking for blood and looking to get out 20 years of frustration.
And I'm checking out Tennessee Florida game is the most expensive tickets for a top 25 team, of all the top 25 team matchups.
Oh yeah, I know. I really want to go Saturday, but I don't know if it's financially responsible to do so. So I think I'm gonna have to just kind of sit this one out and go to another one. But part of me just even wants to be in Knoxville regardless. But I don't want to go all the way up there just to not be at the stadium.
No, yeah, I imagine. I would have done that. I would have go to Knoxville and kind of have like a, kind of tour, stay around, hang out, enjoy the atmosphere. But yeah, it's in terms of financial responsibility. Yeah, it's not. It's a decision that you have to really think about. It's worth it. But nevertheless, I think that even the Florida win over Utah gave even more hype to this game, because if Florida would have came onto this game, let's say 2-1, it wouldn't be the same.
Absolutely, you are completely right. And obviously us winning at Pittsburgh too. But I'll say this: Florida almost ruined it last week by almost losing to South Florida, and they probably should have lost to South Florida, who is a team that had no business hanging with Florida. South Florida has been awful the last 2 years, and the fact that they barely escaped that game, is alarming for Florida.
Yeah, no, I want to correct. I say, imagine if they lost 1 and 2, because they lost to number 20 Kentucky, but even though they lost Kentucky, I feel like they still deserve to be in the top 25 because of the Utah win. But I think Tennessee has to take care of business, because I think, as you said yourself, they almost lost to unranked South Florida. They lost by double digits to Kentucky. So I feel like Tennessee should take care of business.
Yeah. So obviously, we have to kind of look at, what both teams are going to have injury-wise. injury wise. We're not sure. If Cedric Tillman is going to be available for this game or not, because he got a little banged up in the game against Akron, um, and it's a wait and see on that. Now it sounds like Jabari Small is going to be available for Tennessee, and that's huge because Florida's run defense is horrible. Like if you look at every single one of their games, they've given up a ton of rushing yards. I believe against South Florida, they gave up well over 200 yards rushing. Like for example, they gave up 6.2 yards per carry last week against South Florida. So it is and we have to remember, a lot of people, when you think of Josh Heupel's system, when you think about the Vols, that they think of Hendon Hooker throwing the ball around the field, but that isn't necessarily the case. So we can run the ball, and I think that's going to be huge. I think Small and Jalen Wright could have huge games in this one, which, if we can get the ball established and we can run, then that's going to make it even harder for Florida to defend our offense because that will allow Hendon Hooker to cook. And even if we don't have Cedric Tillman, Brew McCoy for the first 3 weeks has been a revelation, and I think he would be more than fine as a wide receiver one. Jalen Hyatt as a slot receiver has been incredible, and I think we've seen some potential for some of the younger receivers. You could see a Ramel Keaton, you could see a Squirrel White step up, and I think have a couple of big plays in this game as well. And plus, the Florida's best defensive player, Ventrell Miller, he's been upgraded to questionable, so he may be able to get on the field. But I doubt even if he does play, he's going to be at 100%. And Florida desperately needs Miller out there to deal with this team because, one, it's hard enough anyway to go up against the Tennessee offense because of how fast we go, how many plays we get off. But, it's just because of the talent that Tennessee's offense has. So a lot of it will come down to injuries on that side of the ball. Now, on the other side, when it comes to Tennessee's defense, of course, Tennessee's defense has probably been the pleasant surprise of the year so far, especially our pass rush the past 2 games. Phenomenal. I mean, what they did to Akron was really, really impressive. Coming off of 20 quarterback rushes at Pittsburgh, and Anthony Richardson is a different beast altogether. Now, obviously, I just mentioned Anthony Richardson has not thrown a single touchdown pass, unless you count his pick six. I think he's thrown 2 pick sixes, if I'm correct. So he's thrown touchdowns to the other team. Now, not to say that he can't throw, because he can, but it just hasn't been consistent at all. And if you look at the weapons on the outside that Florida has, they're not great. There's no Percy Harvin out there for Florida. I do think their backs are kind of talented, especially they have got it's ETN. Let me pull up their depth chart here real quick. I think the best running back they have is look at this. I have Trevor Etienne. He's a true freshman. I think that's a guy to watch for in this game. And I think that's a guy that they really need to get going in this game for them to have success, for them to try to open up that passing game. But I think the absolute key for Tennessee in this game, if you think back to like the Ole Miss game last year, why did Tennessee lose to Ole Miss last year? It wasn't because of the refs. It was because they let Matt Corral run for 200 yards on them, and they allowed him on multiple third downs to extend drives. That's what Anthony Richardson can do. He can extend drives. He can run around and cause issues. They got to find a way to contain him early and often. Make him beat you with his arm. If he turns out he can come in and throw the ball like he's Peyton Manning on Saturday, then so be it. You have to force him to beat you with his arm because he hasn't proved so far that he can, nor am I terrified of the Florida weapons on the outside as a Tennessee Vol here. So I really think that has to be the key on defense. Make Richardson throw the ball. Do not let him affect the game with his legs. Because, I mean, he's going to get his plays, but if you can really keep him inside that pocket, I think you're going to make some good stuff happen if you're the Vols.
Yeah, I think, and also Bill Napier is looking to this game as like He already had a big game to start his tenure. Imagine winning on the road in Knoxville. I think he is going to set himself for like a couple of more seasons. But for Josh Heupel, I think he has to really force the defense. Like, it is, I mean, you said it yourself. Like, the defense has been a good surprise, but if they really want to establish itself as a team that can not only had a good and fast offense, but a very secure defense, that's the game he has to test because you know it's like Anthony Richardson, very have really great leg abilities, but he's not a good thrower. But so they had to force fumbles, force him to throw.
Yes, absolutely. Um, Yeah, and for Florida, being 2-1 at this point in the season is really, really good. I was looking at their schedule beforehand. I thought they could have been 1-2 heading to this game. So the fact they were able to get one of those first two games was a huge benefit. Um, so I've been kind of looking at some of the Florida message boards, some of the Florida fans just to gather their temperature. Um, and it seems like a lot of them are very concerned for this game. They don't seem to be very confident. Um, and it kind of almost reminds me a little bit. Remember Dan Mullen's first year in 2018 down in Florida? He lost to Kentucky at home. And that was Florida's first loss to Kentucky in like 30 years. And I think from the moment he lost that game, I know he had really good years in 19 and 20. But I feel like he never truly recovered from that because at Florida, they expect to beat Kentucky. And I think we have regressed to that level for Florida fans. They expect to beat Tennessee every year because they've done it 16 out of the last 17. They have owned us. I mean, really, if you think about it, we've only beaten them like 7 times since 1990.
I mean, it's 31-20 in the overall series, but so the discrepancy is big. So, Tennessee has to really recoup, kind of, take back the ownership because, uh, you know, when you lose so many in a row, it kind of is hard to keep being your biggest rival.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for Florida fans, I don't think they see us as their biggest rival at all. I mean, they probably see Florida State, they probably see Georgia as bigger rivals than Tennessee. But for Tennessee, because of the psychological hold Florida has put on our program, this is the game that we look forward to every single year because we know if we win this game, it will change the trajectory of the program. And that's what's really on the line here. Because if Tennessee loses this football game, then it's truly going to really negatively affect the rest of the season because you are a double-digit favorite. This is the largest we've ever been a favorite over Florida in the modern era, especially at home in front of our primetime audience with the checkerboard at Neyland. Um, we have to find a way to get this done. Was quickly a shout out to Miguel and Jason for watching us.
Yeah, Miguel Dilari is my coworker. We've been working all day together in the Brazilian census. You know, I don't remember what is the term the Americans use when you go to do the census. Like we sense it. I don't know if that's a verb, but
I have no idea if there is one. I mean, I don't work in the census.
yeah,
Um, I'm sure, and a lot of people here just do it virtually. But
yeah.
um,
In Brazil, it's kind of hard to do that. Even on the phones, have been tricky.
yeah.
So and I messaged Jason if you want to join us. Oh, he's joining on 15 minutes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I definitely want to get his take on this. I also want to ask him about Louisville while he's on. I know I may not want to talk about Louisville, but obviously they're off to a rough start of 1-2. So we'll have to circle back around to this game when he gets in for some more discussion on Tennessee and Florida. But I do kind of want to. So we'll get back to more Tennessee, Florida here in just a little bit. But I do briefly just kind of bring up the rest of week 3. And honestly, week 3 didn't see much in the way of chaos. I thought it was pretty chalk for the most part. No major upsets around college football.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's because September, mid September is there's still the non-con games, and not much teams are gonna pick a hard out of conference schedule. I think only Oregon and Texas A&M kind of had big games with mid top 25 team. But I think Oregon, Texas A&M were the kind of team that like had a big stumble in the polls because they had really bad losses. But they are not bad football teams. They're good football teams, and they proved this week by beating BYU and Miami.
Yeah, I think the biggest loser of last week has to be Miami. You're coming into an SEC stadium to face a team that just lost to Appalachian State, and you can't score a touchdown. When Appalachian State controlled last week's game at Texas A&M, and for all the talk of Tyler Van Dyke being a dark horse Heisman candidate and Miami might be able to compete with Clemson for the ACC, you couldn't even beat a team that right now is in the bottom half of the SEC. I guess it just shows how much better the SEC is than other conferences, but I think that's just more of an indictment on the ACC. I think the ACC, unfortunately, has just not been very impressive through the first few weeks of this season. We saw NC State have to barely hold on at ECU. UNC literally gave up 61 points to Appalachian State in regulation. Had to barely escape Georgia State. Of course, Notre Dame, an affiliated ACC team, started off 0-2 and had to survive a Hail Mary from California last week. The ACC in general is just not that great. Of course, tonight the ACC has a big game. Virginia Tech is hosting West Virginia in the battle for the Black Diamond. I believe that's what that's called. There's the Coal Diamond, something like that. It's a rivalry game from the days back in the Big East. Of course, those two teams win in different conferences, so they haven't played as much anymore. But huge game for both of those teams, West Virginia and Virginia Tech. West Virginia, they started off 1-2 this year, lost the backyard brawl to Pittsburgh, and then turned around and lost at home to Kansas, who, by the way, is 3-0. And a lot of West Virginia fans,
and they're gonna have the biggest, probably one of their biggest games. Also, they not only Knoxville but Lawrence, Kansas, like really hyped up this week. They're facing Duke in football, but I bet all the rivalry they had in basketball are going to translate to football because they're 3-0 and they're faced their biggest rival in basketball. So imagine the hype this game's going to have in Lawrence because it's still Duke.
It is. Both teams have a lot to play for because whoever wins that game is probably going to make a bowl game and, maybe have a chance to make a decent one at that. Now, Kansas' schedule gets really, really hard. I believe every game they play in the last half of their schedule is against a ranked opponent. So their schedule gets way harder the further on. But if Kansas can win this game, start 4-0, then they are in a great spot to go bowling. And Lance Leopold is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire country. What he did at Buffalo was really, really good. And then going to Kansas and put him in this position in only year 2 is amazing because Kansas truly was just a dead program walk and they couldn't do anything. I think they won, 3 conference games in like a decade. They haven't made a bowl game in over a decade. But Lance Leopold he's brought the program back. And honestly, I think for Nebraska, I think that's the type of coach that you need. If you can get Lance Leopold to leave Kansas to go up a state above Kansas to Lincoln, I think that's the type of coach that could help turn around Nebraska.
Yeah, and I'm seeing the Kansas Jayhawks schedule. They had still 2 unranked opponents, but and they're all at home. But then they go on a really hard because they face Oklahoma and Baylor, both on back-to-back ranked road games. Then they face Oklahoma State at home. Then they go on the road to play TTU, Texas Tech. So it's really hard.
Yeah, an extremely hard back half of the schedule. And of course, Houston, I will say, has been disappointing this year. Nowhere near as good as I thought they would be. I mean, they lost on the road to Texas Tech and then got blown out at home by Kansas. So definitely a disappointing season for the Cougars. They thought they could have been the G5 team to go to a New Year's Six Bowl. But now, to me, for that, it seems like it's going to be a Sun Belt team. Whoever wins the Sun Belt is going to be the New Year's Six representative. Please tell me that you saw the end of Troy and Appalachia.
Oh yeah, I saw, and I even listened to call. I mean, the radio the radio announcers by Appalachian State, they're the most blessed people. They always call the most. I mean, they had the most the most incredible call by the Appalachian State Michigan game and all the Appalachian State and Troy. I mean, Appalachian State is like one of those teams that they're not gonna compete for the national championship. They're not like the Blue Bloods. They're but they always have those moments where you remember. It's like when you talk about college football, you have to talk Appalachian State. They're making those moments where we're gonna remember. And this touchdown by the end of the game between Troy was wow.
And it was set up by Troy taking an intentional safety up 4, which put Appalachian State in the position to throw that Hail Mary. I mean, it just an insane turn of events. And they have another huge game this week. They're playing James Madison, who just moved up to the FBS and has been really, really good so far. I believe they're undefeated so far in their first season in FBS. That's a huge game. James Madison at Appalachian State. And, all 3 of the Appalachian State games so far have been much watched TV. I mean, UNC Appalachian State has probably been the game of the year so far in college football, for being honest. I mean, that game was just unbelievable. Of course, the Texas A&M, probably the biggest upset of the year so far. And then Troy and Appalachian State had probably the best ending of any game so far. So Appalachian State has been much watched television so far this year. And embodiment of Fun Belt.
And they're gonna face some interesting team. Like a game that I'm looking for is the Coastal Carolina game. Coastal Carolina is 3-0. Is still a great job by James Chadwell. Because Coastal Carolina has been good for a couple of years, and they're 3-0.
Yeah, I know that. That's right. Coastal Carolina is on the road tonight at Georgia State. Here, I'm going to take a look at Appalachian State's schedule here right now. So
they face James Madison and then Citadel.
Yeah, they also go on the road to Marshall, and they go on the road to Georgia Southern. So they got some tough road games here. And they also play Old Dominion, who also upset an FBS team as well in Virginia Tech. So the last 4 opponents they play, that November schedule for Appalachian State is going to be really interesting. And I think if you go on a run from that, I think you deserve to be in the New Year's Six. Because so far, this has easily been the best G5 team. The Mountain West has been disappointing. CUSA does not hold a candle to the Sun Belt. The MAC doesn't hold a candle to the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt is where it's at in G5 this year.
Yeah, and look who's joining us to talk some ACC football.
Hey, Jason, what is up, brother?
What's up, guys? Let me try to get my headphones connected here. For some reason, I heard you guys through the speaker and not through the headphones here. We got to get that fixed.
Settings and audio. Then you set up the speaker.
There we go. Now I got you guys in the headphones. How's it going, boys?
Oh, I'm doing phenomenal. Hope you are as well.
I'm really glad to hear that. Nick, congratulations on your new gig. I'm really proud of you. Gus, I know you're doing big things. I'm really excited to be able to join you guys. And I'm really excited to be able to follow your successes, on social media and whatnot. Obviously, none of us are in East Tennessee anymore, but it's always nice to keep up with, what you guys have been doing, and you guys are doing big things.
Oh, that's absolutely fan. So I do kind of start, since we have you in here, obviously this Saturday, massive game for the Vols against Florida. We talked about this for a while earlier. Just what are your thoughts on it? Because to me, at least, the 2 main goals to me for Tennessee, establish the run, because Florida's run defense so far has not been very good for the first 3 games for the Gators, especially since their best defender may be out for this game. And then on defense for Tennessee, keep Anthony Richardson in the pocket. Do not let him use his legs to beat you. Avoid a repeat of what happened in the Ole Miss game last year with Matt Corral. Just what else do you see with this Tennessee-Florida game that the Vols need to do to take care of business?
Well, first, I want to agree with both of the points you made. And I think with Jabari Small potentially coming back, I think if he comes back and you can establish the run, on offense, I think that's a good start for the Vols because obviously that's going to open up everything for Hendon Hooker. You're not going to be able to just stack the box against the run. Once they try to do that, then you can just hit somebody over the top. Even if Cedric Tillman's out, maybe you slot in Squirrel White over there. I think that's the number one thing for me is you have to establish yourself on the ground because if you could uncap that defense, you've got a guy in Squirrel White that can go and make those big plays even without Cedric Tillman. So I think that's the most important thing for me. But very close second is containing Richardson because that guy is not a very good pocket passer. He can make a throw here or there, but there's a reason that he has as many tackles as he does. As tackles as what? What is it? Tackles as completions or something stupid like that? I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head.
More tackles than he has touchdown passes, which he has 0, unless you count touchdown passes to the other team.
Yeah, it was something stupid like that, and all it says is, okay, he's a good runner, but what's he going to do from the pocket? And if you can keep contained on him, and you can seal the edges to keep him from escaping out of the pocket, and you force him to make those throws, the DBs that Tennessee has, whether it be Flowers or Kamal Haddon, those guys can catch the football. You don't have to have Alontae Taylor back there to have interceptions. Kamal Haddon and Trey Flowers and all these different guys, Jalen McCullough, all of these guys can make plays. And so if you can make Anthony Richardson throw the football, you are going to be in business on defense. And then if you can establish the run, especially with Jabari Smallback, which I think is the current word is that he's going to play. I think if you could do those things, you have a really good chance to beat a talented but underachieving Florida team.
Yeah, and I really think, for Billy Napier, I think he's underestimating just how difficult this road trip is going to be. Because I know he said on Monday, it's not like we're going to Canada. It's just another game. But, this isn't Louisiana going to – and I know we were just praising the Sun Belt, but, the Sun Belt doesn't have atmospheres like Neyland Stadium. It's going to be unstable. I mean, this is going to be
right.
Unique. Like,
and I get that perspective, but at the same time, what do you want him to say? Do you want him to say, "Oh, we're intimidated going in here"? You can't say that as a coach, especially in the SEC. You can't do that. So while of course Tennessee fans will use it as bulletin board material, nobody in the Tennessee locker room is using that as bulletin board material. That's coach talk for me. I think a lot of people are reading way too much into that comment because, again, what do you want him to say? You can't just go and admit you're walking into, what is going to be the most daunting atmosphere on your schedule all year. You can't go out and admit that. And so I get why Tennessee fans would be frustrated over that. But at the end of the day, from a coach's perspective, you just have to understand that that's just preparation. It's a rowdy environment, but I mean, you're going to have other rowdy environments. Probably this will probably be the rowdiest, but at the same time, you have to be ready to play in that. And at the SEC level, you have to walk into a few of those every year. Whether it be in Tennessee or in Alabama, LSU, any of these places, Florida, even for other schools. There are places to play that are difficult, and that's just the way it goes. You just have to be ready and go and do it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely make a good point about that. It's just really interesting because I believe, if I'm correct, Richardson has never started on the road in his career. This, I think, is his first true road start. I think all the starts before were either on a neutral site or at home. And of course, this year, this is their first road game away from the Swamp. I mean, obviously, they played 2 really big games between Utah and Kentucky, so this is their 3rd big game of the year. If you don't count South Florida, although they had to escape South Florida, which was quite the struggle win, if I have to say so, because South Florida has been awful since Jeff Scott took over. There's a reason why.
Don't you put that evil on me? Don't you do it? Because you say that, then they'll beat Louisville this weekend.
Oh yeah, is that who plays? That Louisville plays? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll have to
don't you put that evil on me?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's like you provoke Jason to make, like I say, oh yeah, they're not good. Louisville's gonna destroy them, and then Saturday comes and bam, and
I know better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in defense of Louisville, real quick, I know they're 1-2, but clearly Syracuse is way better than I thought. Most of us thought they were going to be. I mean, they just beat Purdue the other day. And I was really impressed with Syracuse's defense because Aiden O'Connell can throw the ball all over the yard, and they really helped. They really kept that Purdue offense down until the fourth quarter, and then were able to outduel him. And I really have always thought Dino Babers was a really good coach. It's just for some reason it hasn't worked out the past couple of years, but it looks like that he potentially could be on the way to saving his job at least for this year at Syracuse. I think starting the game on the road that first week for Louisville, it didn't work out like that. But then turning around after getting blown out and going down to the bounce house and pulling that one off, I thought was really gutsy, a really good win for Louisville, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And then this last week, it was just a 50-50 back and forth game. And Florida State just came out on top. And we also have to give Florida State their due. They're a better team than I thought they would be, especially Jordan Travis. But even then, he went down, and of course, the backup came in and won. I don't know. It's really interesting when I watch a Louisville game, at least from my outside perspective. It really is weird to me how the announcers try to make Malik Cunningham be Lamar Jackson 2.0 when he is not. He's carrying the team, no doubt about it, but he's not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson elevated Louisville in a way that Malik Cunningham he cannot.
You don't have to tell me twice. I agree. Even at school, because what's wild is Malik has been starting since Lamar's junior year would have been my senior year at Louisville. So Malik has been starting since about halfway through the 2018 season, which is wild to me. Because he's a sixth-year senior who was teammates with Lamar. He was his backup. But people, for as long as he's been there, they've been calling him Baby Lamar. And while he runs reminiscent of Lamar, he's not quite as athletic and he's not quite as shifty, but he still makes those similar types of electric plays. But he can't throw the football. This guy is just not a good quarterback. He's like Anthony Richardson, but better, running the ball. And whereas Anthony Richardson's a little bit bigger and could probably play tight end, Malik Cunningham would get himself killed trying to run over the middle. But he's a guy who's going to win you games on the ground, but he's not going to be able to pass for victory. And that's really frustrating. I agree. And then I think the most frustrating thing for me, though, about Louisville is it's just the lack of preparation. You have an entire offseason to get ready for Syracuse, and you know who you're going to have in Garrett Schrader because we just played against Garrett Schrader in the Music City Bowl like 2 years ago. You know exactly what he's going to do. You know what Dino Babers wants to do. And he went out and they just did everything that they wanted to do. It's not that the team isn't talented because the team is more talented than they've been in several years. It's the lack of preparation that's just so unbelievably frustrating. And that's what's going to cost Scott Satterfield his job, in my opinion, is just lack of preparation because you can't go out there having an entire offseason to prepare for one opponent and then go look stupid. And then, yeah, you got the win against UCF, and that's great. But then to turn around and have the same problems on defense that you had against Syracuse and go and have them against Florida State, not making any adjustments, that's unacceptable. And I think most of it is on Brian Brown, the defensive coordinator, but Scott Satterfield's loyalty to Brian Brown is going to cost him his job if he's not careful. Sorry, that's the end of my rant about Louisville. I'm sorry. That's how I feel about Louisville football. I think Louisville is going to be in a dogfight this week, a needless dogfight against South Florida, because if you let a team hang around and give them the belief that they can win, it will become a dogfight, regardless how much more talented you are. And that's unfortunately, I think, what's going to happen this week.
Unfortunately, Louisville too. It's not even in the hardest part of their schedule yet. When you get down to that last month, especially, was it James Madison, Wake Forest, NC State, and Kentucky? Then
I went
somewhere.
Yeah, I went on record in saying I thought we would go 6-6 and we would start 6-0 and then lose the last 6 games. I still think we're going to lose the last 6 games, but the clock's ticking on the first 6 because last time I checked, we're 1-2, and so right now we're looking at 4-7. Or 4-8.
Definitely have to be Boston College and UVA. That's for sure. I'd have any chance.
I'm not even. I don't know that we're going to beat those 2 teams, to be honest with you. But anyway, I that's my rant about Louisville. I know Gus is ready for me to stop talking about Louisville.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, because I have one thing to talk about Louisville, and it's not football. But go ahead, Nick.
All right, just one question. So that's 2-part question. One, what does Scott Satterfield have to do to save his job at this point? And is that possible? And two, if he does end up getting fired, who should Louisville look to replace him? Like, who would be your ideal guy to replace?
Are we talking actual, like, realistic or pipe dream? Because I can tell you who I want, but I can also tell you who we could realistically get, and they're two completely different.
Give me the pipe dream, and then give me the realistic.
Oh, a pipe dream, Saban. I mean, that's easy enough. Yeah. Realistically, it's going to be Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom has kind of plateaued at Purdue, and the Big Ten is also a tougher league than the ACC. Whereas I think if he came to the ACC, he only really has one true opponent every year that's consistently good, and that's Clemson. And even then, Clemson may not be that good for that long because Dabo Swinney, in my opinion, will succeed Nick Saban in Alabama when he retires. I've said that all along. He went to Alabama. He played wide receiver there, and I think he will go back. So that means, okay, who's going to come back? Is it Tony Elliott coming from Virginia back to Clemson? Is he ready to take that over? Is it going to be Brent Venables coming in from Oklahoma? You don't think that he would leave Oklahoma, right? And so, anyway, the one true opponent for Louisville would be Clemson, and I think that Jeff Brom is a guy that can have that type of effect on Louisville and be pretty decent. I don't think he is the greatest coach ever, but I think realistically he's who we could get. He's like the prince of Louisville, and because the Broms are the royal family of Louisville in terms of football. All of his brothers and he played at Louisville. They're from like the affluent neighborhood in Louisville. Played at Trinity, which is like the rich kid, like preppy high school in Louisville. And a lot of people, were really upset when he turned down Louisville the first time. But I don't think he was ready for that kind of rebuild, and I don't think the rebuild was ready for him. And so that's the answer to your second question. Answer to your first question is, I think that Scott Satterfield has to at least make a bowl and show significant improvement in preparation and especially on defense. I think it's doable because if you fire Brian Brown and go and hire a competent DC, I think that makes a tremendous impact. However, his loyalty to his people is, it may end up being his downfall. But Scott Satterfield has a really, really, really good class put together for next year. But if he keeps losing, they're going to start decommitting, and they're all going to decommit if he gets fired. And so that's the precarious perch that the that the administration kind of has in its back pocket right now. Is this situation where, yeah, you've got the number one running back in the country. You've got a top 5 or 10 quarterback in the country. You've got a bunch of these dudes coming in next year, and then the quarterback is the one recruiting all of them. Personally, like this kid, Pierce Clarkson, he's joining everybody up in group chats and saying, "Hey, come to Louisville," and he's recruiting people. And we talked to his dad when I was at ESPN Louisville. We talked to his dad, and he said what really surprised him about Louisville was they were expecting, coming from California, that it was just a bunch of cornfields in the middle of Nebraska type deal. And he said this is an affluent, it's like a bustling metropolis. And he said if we can get these kids from California on a plane to Louisville, they'll come because people just have the wrong idea. And so they've been recruiting all these people, and they've got this ridiculous class. It's like a top 10 or 12 class in the country coming in, by far the best that Louisville's ever put together. And they'll all decommit if Satterfield's gone, with very few exceptions. And so that's kind of the yin yang of this situation is, yeah, you can fire him and you might get better in the immediate term, but if you give him a couple extra years, maybe he's the slow burn. Maybe he's Mark Stoops coming in, and you just got to give him time, and eventually he'll put it together. I'm of the belief that he is in that mold. I am of the belief that Scott Satterfield, given enough time, will win football games at Louisville. But at the same time, you have to see some tangible progress, and you've seen tangible steps backwards, and that's the problem. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Oh, no, that was fantastic. I know. So, Gus, I know you had a question not football related, but still Louisville.
I mean, what a win by Indy 11. Louisville City, they're the number one in the East. They only lost 5 games. Indy 11 eliminated, and they got the win. And they got the win 2-1. Can't get any better than that. I wanted to talk to you for a long time about that game because you said it yourself. If you were talking before, like Indy 11 seems like a lost season. Nothing was going for them, and they defeat the number one seed in the East. A team that you hate.
Yeah, and not only did we defeat them, we defeated them twice. We won both the home and the away leg of the LIPAPCA, which is the Louisville Indianapolis Proximity of Football Association Football Contest, LIPAFC. And I'm trying to find the picture of it here, but I want it to be known to everybody watching the Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports podcast that Louisville City has never won the Barrel. And for those that don't know what the Barrel is, which I assume includes you guys, that is the Barrel. If I can get it here, this is the trophy for the game. It debuted in this last match. It is a construction barrel with the I-65 sign, which for anybody that has lived anywhere along I-65 between Indianapolis and Louisville, of course, I've lived on both ends of that, and I've traveled up and down 65 numerous times. You know that it's always under construction, and this is the most apropos trophy that there ever was.
Love that.
And Louisville City has never won the Barrel.
I mean, they lost only 5 games all season, and both were in the 11. Like, that's what we're talking about. It's like I'm gonna get to that point in the Brazilian topic. Flamengo. Wow, that's awesome. Flamengo. So me and Nick talk about Flamengo. Going great in the Libertadores final, Brazilian Cup final, best roster, but they cannot win Fluminense. Fluminense has a decent, good team, but they cannot win. Louisville City, number one team in the East. Got qualified a long time. It's like they're like 31 points ahead of Indy 11, but they lost both games. I gotta love that.
Nothing is going to make me not mad that Indy 11 has underachieved this season, especially considering that, we fired our head coach last year in the middle of the season. We let the interim coach go as well and went out and hired the coach of the year last year. He was at El Paso Locomotive, and then he brought half of his El Paso team with him, and he's an up-and-coming star, and then it just flopped. Not that I don't think he's a good coach, and I think he will be fine. Give him an entire offseason to go and build a roster in his own image. I think that the team will be fine because, he was not afraid to trade anybody that didn't, kind of fit. And as you saw as the season went on, the team got better. Although the most recent game was like a 5-0 thrashing at Monterey, which that was awesome.
I'm glad I didn't. There were like 4 game, like 3. They won 3 out of the last 5 games.
Yeah. There was a 5-match unbeaten streak, including 3 wins. And then back to back, it was a Saturday night and like a Wednesday night back to back against San Antonio, who's the number 1 team in the West, and then Louisville City, who is the number 1 team in the East. Beat them both in like 4 days. That was awesome. And so I'm thrilled to have the coaching staff, Mark Lowry especially, and I'm thrilled to see where this team goes. But it's unfortunate, but Indy 11 has been eliminated. Nothing's going to make me happy about being eliminated from playoff contention, but beating Lou City twice is still pretty cool, and I'm happy to do that. And as long as they don't win the championship, I won't be too mad. But I do want to go on record. I am rooting for San Antonio. Out of the Western Conference, Jordan Farr. Shout out to Jordan. He's a great guy, former Indy 11 goalie. For some reason, Indy 11 management ran him out of town, and so he went and signed with San Antonio. Very well liked, beloved among Indy 11 supporters. He's out there as their goalie, their number 1 for San Antonio. So everybody in Indianapolis is rooting for San Antonio FC, and best wishes to Jordan Farr from me. And he's a great guy, and he's just one guy that you just have to root for. He's a good dude, humble guy, just a class act, and really, really good at what he does between the sticks.
But yeah, and I love to talk about kind of like the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th division in the United States, because I know, and I love the MLS is getting a lot of attention, and I love that United States soccer is getting better. It's just a shame there's no relegation promotion, because there's nothing better than a relegation fight in Brazil. that drives people nuts. I love
I
rolling.
don't want to see it because Indy 11 would have gotten relegated a couple of times in a row now.
But that's the good thing. Then you got back. Then you go down and you go up. Sometimes that's the craziest thing. Sometimes
that would be cool for us because I think a Chattanooga FC could have definitely gotten promoted a couple of times.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think and but that's why I just want to give a shout out to Indy 11 because I know how good it is to win derbies. Here in America, it's kind of like compared to the Americana. I call the American Derby in Brazil because between Rio Branco and União Barbarense, which are both cities that were founded by Americans. So I wanna get that name out there, the American Derby, because both cities were founded by Americans coming from the South, and I you know and I love beating them. I love even beating them. They have been out of professional soccer since 2020, but beating them is the best. So imagine Jason, about that. But uh, but that's great. But we want to get other topics going. Have to go really soon. But I really appreciate you coming on, Jason. Really appreciate. Hope you can come join us other times. And I congratulations on your stuff going on, man.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you as always for rooting me on as well. I for all I said about you guys rooting you guys on, I know you guys do the same for me, and that means the world to me. I appreciate you guys, and thanks everybody for listening to me ramble, and it's good to talk to you boys.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more of Jason's voice, you can go to some Austin P Governors basketball games coming up this winter. He's going to be your PA announcer, the voice of the Governors up there in Clarksville, Tennessee. So, congratulations on that.
I'm blessed for that opportunity. Thank you again for the kind words, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out in Clarksville, and let's go P.
Yeah, and I remember. I don't know if I remember when I think there were some rumors about PA for the Ice Bears, and I remember as soon as I saw that, I remember tagging you or something like that. I thought your name was the first name that came into my mind because I know how much you fought for this. So that's friends root for other friends.
Exactly. I appreciate you guys. You guys are the best, and I'm really proud of you guys for what you guys have been doing, and we're showing out for the RSS boys.
Oh yeah, Rock Solid Sports, baby.
All right, it's good to talk to you guys. I'll see you guys later.
See you guys.
That was Jason Wyrick joining us for our Two Countries to America's All Sports. And speaking of rumbling, I know Nick, you wanted to go on a rant about the Titans because
I kind of wanted to ask Jason about the Colts, but it both of our teams. I know for the last couple of years, the Titans and Colts have been fighting for the top of the AFC South, but this year there's no point in having that fight because both of our teams are sorry, but the Titans might be worse. Okay, first and foremost, I think I said this in the last episode. Todd Downing needs to go. He does not need to be offensive coordinator anymore for the Tennessee Titans. The play calling is beyond abysmal. Think about this: 8 runs that Derrick Henry had in that first quarter. Hold on, I'll have to be right back. I have to turn off my.
Okay. No problem. Real quick, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna just go ahead and go to the Brazilian topics. Congratulations to Cruzeiro, is back to the first division after 3 seasons. They were relegated in 2019. They played the second division 2020, almost got relegated. 2021, they had an average year, and then this year they became like a SAF, which is they became like a true they changed the ownership type of deal. They had true owners, and now they have Ronaldo, former Real Madrid player, as a owner, and now yesterday they beat Vasco 3-0. They got back to the first division after 3 years. I'm just gonna go ahead and Nick and go do the Brazilian topics just now because I have some things have to go soon. But and then Brazilian Cup finals gonna be a big game. Corinthians Flamengo again. They played in the quarterfinal Libertadores. First game is in Corinthians Stadium on October 12th, which is a holiday. So hopefully I get credentials for this game. And the second game on October 19th is going to be at Flamengo Stadium in Maracanã. I think Flamengo is a little bit favorite, but Corinthians has a better starting 11 than they had a month before. But this game is going to be crucial for Vitor Pereira's tenure. If I think they lose, I think he's not going to stay. I think he's going to go back to Europe. If he wins, the Corinthians qualify for the Libertadores and wins the title, I think he's going to remain. So there's a lot of hanging on the ballot. A lot of at stake for Corinthians. Flamengo, I think, is going to be their first final in front of their fans because they won the Libertadores in Peru. They won the Brazilian Championship not playing it because it was like not a playoff. So they won. They got a title because Palmeiras lost. They won the Brazilian championship on the road as well in 2020, and there were no fans. So it's the first final, the first big final, the national final Flamengo plays since 29, since they has in this big good streak in 2019. So there's a lot of stake, and finally in the Brazilian topics, Palmeiras getting even closer to the title. They got a win at the Derby versus Santos 1-0. And Abel Ferreira, I think now that he's not playing for the Brazilian Cup or Libertadores, has all focus in the Brazilian Championship. I think Palmeiras is a true favorite to win the title. So that's all the headlines and news for the Brazilian Championship. And so now back to some Tennessee Titans rant about how they blew against the Chiefs, against the Bills.
The Bills, yeah. Okay, so where was I? So fire the OC. All right. Next one's going to be a bit spicy. John Robinson. We need to have some conversation about John Robinson, the GM. So I've said Todd Downing needs to go. Just the play calling isn't really good. The point I was making was, so Derrick Henry had 8 runs in the first half of that game against the Bills. 3 of them were toss plays. That is not Derrick Henry's bread and butter. His bread and butter is hand it to him, get to the outside zone, and let him cook. The toss play is not his bread and butter. And I don't know why they were trying to force that. It made literally no sense. But part of it was offensive line isn't very good, especially when Taylor Lewan went down with injury and you're having to play Daly Davis out there at left tackle, which is another indictment on John Robinson, which is the second part of this rant. He has not done a great job the past couple of years. Now, he did a phenomenal job getting the Titans to a spot where they could be competitive the past 2 to 3 seasons. But unfortunately, it has not been very sustainable for the Titans. He's missed on a couple of He's missed on a couple of picks. Remember Isaiah Wilson couldn't even make it to the regular season. Dylan Randus has not done much of anything, unfortunately. And we're seeing the results of that. Our offensive line's patchwork is in complete shambles. When the depth goes haywire because of injuries, then it really rears its ugly head. Third, Ryan Tannehill will have to go eventually. I have lost all confidence in Ryan Tannehill as quarterback. He's just not, unfortunately, the spark that he had when he came into 2019 and the way he played for 2020 is just not there anymore. He's regressed. Some of the decision making isn't very good. He isn't able to throw the ball down the field consistently, and it feels like the offense is limited right now. And honestly, I know it may be the unwise decision, but I'm all in favor of letting Malik Willis play right now. And I know he'll make a ton of mistakes if you do put him out there, but I want him to get game experience. I want to see if he can improve week to week, because I thought he improved significantly throughout the preseason. I thought he improved week to week, showed he was gaining more and more confidence. And I think that, especially if the season continues to go off the rails, which it very well could. I mean, I don't think the Titans are beating the Raiders this weekend. I think the Raiders are a much better team than Tennessee. It could go off the rails. And at that point, I think Malik Willis should get some starts to at least see what he can do. At least to see if by the end of the season, if you have a potential for him to be the guy or not. Because if the Titans go down this road that they're going to have one of the top draft picks. And then at that point, you either have a decision to make between sticking with Malik Willis or going in a completely different direction at the quarterback position. But it's pretty clear by this time next year, I don't see Ryan Tannehill remaining the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. He's just unfortunately not good enough. But I mean, it's not even completely his fault. I think the offensive play calling isn't great. The offensive line isn't great. And then the receiving situation, the receivers. I said this last week. I was already angry heading into the first Titans game because I had just seen A.J. Brown go for 10 and 125 in the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's very clear last night, Monday night, just how important A.J. Brown truly was to that offense. And we were not able to pay him what he wanted because we gave Ryan Tannehill nearly $30 million a year to go out there and not even throw 200 yards in a game. So some of the decision making has been mind boggling, and it's really, really coming. The chickens are coming home to roost for the Tennessee Titans. I think, unfortunately, for this era, the peak has passed, and it's just clear. I mean, and I think the team can improve. I think they can win some games throughout the year. But it's clear they're not going to be anywhere close to the Buffalo Bills, to the Chiefs, to any of these top teams in the AFC. And, of course, the AFC South as a whole is a mess, right? I mean, the Colts, you couldn't even score a point the other day in Jacksonville. We'll have to see if Jacksonville can be sustainable. I mean, the Jaguars right now look like the best team in the AFC South to me, which is insane to say for 2 weeks. But even then, they lost at the Commanders, and the Commanders are not that good of a football team. The Texans have shown some flashes. And they were competitive, of course, in their first 2 weeks. They almost beat Denver on Sunday. But whoever wins this division, if they could win it with a losing record, they will get demolished in the wild card weekend. So at this point, if we're all fighting for a sub 500 playoff berths, you have to ask yourselves: would you rather want the playoff berth, or would you rather want the high draft pick? So I know, just not great times right now in the AFC South. It's a miserable division to live in. Fortunately, the rest of the NFL has been very exciting.
I mean, what exciting game that was in the AFC West between the Cards and the Raiders. I mean, I called the Cardinals were gonna win, even though you won 10-9. You got 10-9 in our prediction matchup.
Yeah, I have Kyler Murray, one of my fantasy teams, and I was like halfway through the game ready to drop him. Like, okay, this guy, he just doesn't have it this year. The stuff about him not sitting in the offseason, it's true. He just doesn't have it. But man, that fourth quarter, wasn't Kyler Murray just magical in that fourth quarter? I mean, just the plays he was making, the ways he was able to extend plays, like that one, the 2-point conversion that he had, where he was running around for like 20 seconds and eventually ran it in for the conversion. I mean, I think they said on the broadcast he ran for like 85 yards on that play just to get 2 yards. And against NFL athletes, I mean, Kyler Murray, he's just unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Oh yeah, he's I mean, he had a very contentious preseason and an off season, but he's making his contract worth it, as he wants to prove. And so let's go straight to our picks. I want to kind of do I like this kind of pick like the picks competition. First week was tie. Second week you won. So let's see how it's gonna be on week 3. So start with Steelers at Browns. Both teams coming off a really ugly loss. The Browns unbelievable gave up had a blew the game that was practically won, and the Steelers lost to the Patriots. So who you got?
Man, this is gonna be this is gonna be an ugly game. Honestly, I'm probably watching more of the mocks in Illinois tonight, but I give me the Browns. I just don't trust Mitchell Trubisky. I think Nick Chubb will have enough big plays to pull it out.
Yeah, give me the Browns too. Yeah, even though they inexplicably lost to the Jets, I think they're gonna bounce back. And so next game is gonna be Texans at Bears. So do you think this game should be the Justin Fields game to prove that he can be a true starter?
I think it is. I don't think he played terrible at Green Bay the other day. And of course, obviously, he played well at least in the back half of Week 1. And we have to remember he has no offensive line. Like it's not completely fair to him, I think. But I'm going to go a bit of live here. I'm going to go with the Texans. I think the Texans have not played bad the first 2 weeks. They should have won Week 1. They had plenty of chances to win Week 2. I don't think Davis Mills has been playing terrible. I like the Texans. Lovie Smith gets his revenge on Chicago.
Give me the Bears. Give me the Bears. So now your beloved Tennessee Titans playing at home versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Both teams are 0-2.
Yeah, but the Raiders, they've had 2 close losses to 2 really good teams in the Chargers and Cardinals. Meanwhile, the Titans lost to the Giants in an upset and got ran out of the stadium. If this were like the team of a year or 2 ago, that I would think the Titans would be able to bounce back and find a way. And I don't want to doubt Mike Vrabel. And I know some people are going to start thinking about, oh, should we fire Mike Vrabel? No, I think that this is more of a personnel issue than a coaching issue, at least from the head coaching standpoint. But I think the Raiders are a lot better right now. I think Devontae Adams is going to eat this team alive. I mean, we saw what Stephon Diggs did the other night: 12, 148, and 3 touchdowns. Devontae Adams is going to put up massive numbers against the Titans. Give me the Raiders.
Give me the Titans. Why not? Give me the Titans. I think they're going to bounce back. I think if you said to yourself, the offense has to prove they're worth it, especially the quarterback. So I think give me the Titans. So just the picks because I have some other things to go today. Chiefs and Colts.
Chiefs.
Yeah, I got the Chiefs too. It's obvious. Bills at Dolphins.
Man, Bills. But I think it's going to be a great game. Tua Tagovailoa, shout out the Tua non people. They were on to something. He is a real NFL quarterback.
Give me the Bills too. So Lions at Vikings, the NFC North contentious.
This is gonna be a good game. I'll go.
You got the Lions right last week.
I'm gonna go with Vikings, but it's gonna be a high-scoring game. Take the over here.
I got the Lions. Now I think the Lions. I got the Lions. I'm gonna go. A little bold. I'm gonna go the Lions. Ravens at Patriots.
Ravens.
Ravens too. Ravens. Bengals at Jets. Jets 1-1.
I'm gonna go Bengals. I think Cincy will get it. We'll start their turnaround this week.
I'm gonna go Jets. My New York Jets. I'm gonna go Jets after what Joe Flacco did last week. Let's go, man.
Joe Flacco mania.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Linsanity. Now it's gonna be Joe Flacco mania. Mm-hmm. Eagles at Contenders. That's for the division. I think if the Eagles wants to win the division, that has to be a must-win game. Give me the Eagles.
Eagles. I agree. I think that Jalen Hurts. I think he's taken that next step this year as well. He's improved as a passer, and as we see, he can take over again with his legs.
Saints at Panthers.
Panthers
too. What's the Saints do? They even had a ugly fight with the Bucs and Brady.
Yeah. Not a very good team.
Jaguars at Chargers.
See, we don't know if Justin Herbert's going to play or not, and that's the key here because he took a shot in the Chiefs game. I'm going to still go with Chargers, assuming that Herbert plays.
I'm going to go Jaguars, no matter who plays a quarterback position.
Interesting.
Rams at Cardinals. That's for the division.
Well, we'll see with the Niners, potentially. I think the Niners have a roster better than the Cardinals. But here early in the season, give me Arizona. I think Arizona, they've struggled against the Rams, especially towards the end of last year and in the playoffs. I think they will come out to make a big statement here.
Give me the Rams. Falcons and Seahawks. I think Seahawks. I think they're, even though they're in the down year, they have Geno Smith. They're still better than the Falcons.
Here's the thing: the Falcons have played a lot better than I thought they would. They should have been in New Orleans, and then they almost stormed back to beat the Rams. And Marcus Mariota looks actually really good. I mean, I know he's made some mistakes, but Drake London looks good. Give me Atlanta.
Wow, give me the Falcons. The rematch of the 2020-2021 NFC Championship game, Green Bay Packers at Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks here.
I'm gonna go with the Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers really wants to prove that this season is the it season, and winning on the road on a team that won in Lambeau on an NFC Championship game, that has to be it. Sunday Night Football game, the 49ers at Broncos.
Niners. I don't trust the Broncos so far. They don't look anywhere near as good as they should. And I really question their coach.
Give me the Niners too, and also I feel bad for Trey Lance that he got really bad injury, but it wasn't ended up the best case scenario for the 49ers because now they don't have to bench one young quarterback because the older one is in a more trustworthy position to undermine his confidence. Like, they're going to use every last draw of football Jimmy G can play, and at the same time, Trey Lance now is going to recover, but not had some experience. So, if Trey Lance can recover well from the surgery and go back strong, this one ended up being the best case scenario for the 49ers.
Yeah, but the stuff that we saw from Trey Lance early on was not that impressive. Of course, Chicago was a bad weather game, so you can't really take much from that. From even though early in this game, he wasn't throwing the ball a lot. It was mostly runs up the middle, in which he got hurt on. So clearly, they weren't confident in his arm. I would be kind of concerned about his future moving forward because one, he's going to be coming off of an ACL, and I just don't know if he's going to be a true NFL starter moving forward.
And Monday Night Football game, the NFC East rivalry between the Dallas Cowboys and the Giants. Giants are 2-0, good start, and the Cowboys got a really good win over the Bengals.
I can't believe I'm saying this. Giants. I got the Giants going 3-0.
And give me the Cowboys. I think and what a weekend is going to be in New York. Two really good games, And it's funny that the Jets game is $30 and the Giants game is $115. I would have picked the Jets game to watch.
Yeah, I definitely want to go see Burrow and Jamar Chase play. I mean, the Cowboys, they got Cooper Rush playing at quarterback, So
it's more about the rivalry than than the actual excitement and the players. It's more like it's a rivalry game.
Oh yeah, and Cowboys Giants is always a big ticket.
Yeah, so that was our predictions. Nick won last week, so he's 1-0 because we tied week 1. So and he got 10-9 the week 2. So Nick is up by 1 in our weekly prediction score. Let's say that.
Oh yes, absolutely. I guess just very, very briefly as we begin to start wrapping up the show here. Obviously MLB coming down to a close. We're a few weeks away from the playoffs starting there, and really most of the divisions are kind of we know how they're going to end, except for the NL East. The Mets and Braves still only a game apart. The Mets lead. Both the Mets and Braves are playoff teams. I'm very curious to see who ends up winning this thing. I mean, it feels like the Braves have been knocking on the door, but they just can't get over the Mets. So I don't know. I feel like the Mets might be able to hold on here, but whoever wins, there's a bye on the line here. That second seed is on the line here, and that's absolutely huge.
And also winning the division, it's still something worth it. Winning the division as two teams there kind of wanted to prove they're the reign supreme. The Braves coming off of not showing that they're not on a hangover on a World Series. The Mets and their ownership group wants to prove they're true contenders. So, and they're gonna face off in October, regardless of the playoffs, because they're gonna face each other up in the last week of the regular season. So, what a great rivalry! It's gonna be a great man. And also shout out to Aaron Judge. They're in the 60 home run regular season club now. He is a true bomber. But the thing is, all of this is not gonna matter if the New York Yankees not succeed in October, because if the Yankees fans are tired of is succeeding the regular season and having disappointing losses in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Yankees the Yankees have by far the most pressure out of any team in the MLB this year. That they have to find a way to get it done this year. But first you got to close with the AL East. You're only up 6.5 on the Blue Jays, so you got to find a way to close it up there. You're going to be the second seed. You got to find a way to beat Houston, because the Astros have been the Yankees' Achilles heel. They cannot beat Houston in the playoffs. They got to find a way to overcome Houston.
Yeah. It's like Houston has been. I mean, the Red Sox are incredibly. They're all the AL teams are still in. Incredibly, I don't know how that happens, but even the Red Sox, who are 18 games behind, are still fighting for a wild card spot.
Yeah, and I'm really rooting for the Mariners. I want the Mariners to hold on for that last spot. I want to see them be back in the playoffs the first time in over 20 years.
And
especially after watching a documentary on them from John Boyce about their history. So,
yeah, they deserve to be back. Almost 20-year drought. It's really depressing to be that long without making the playoffs. Not even winning, making the playoffs. Because the Twins, they make the playoffs, but they always lose. The Mariners don't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the Mariners, I really want to see them hold on here. But they're going to have to be very consistent. Also on the other side, when you look at the NL race, you got this race between the Phillies, the Brewers, the Giants. The Diamondbacks are still technically in it, which is crazy to me. The Phillies have a lot of pressure on them here. I think if they fail, they're going to see wholesale changes in Philadelphia, because their fans were expected way more this year than what they've gotten.
Do you know what's crazy? The most the most boring division in baseball is the AL Central, because like the Cleveland Guardians and the Chicago White Sox have a matchup tonight that probably is going to have a lot of implications in the playoff race, and the tickets are $2. $2.
Yeah.
That just showed that I think the AL Central again is going to be out by the first round of playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, whoever wins the division might win one game in the postseason, and that's it. So but then again, we saw last year the Braves. I mean, they didn't do well in the regular season, and then they kind of turned the light on and went absolutely nuts. So you never know in baseball. We learned that with the balls this past May, that's for sure.
And to close up, do you have some racing updates from NASCAR?
Yeah, so the first round of the NASCAR playoffs was completed on Saturday night down up in Bristol, at least from where I am at here in East Tennessee. Very busy night on Saturday. So the first four drivers were out. So Tyler Reddick, Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick are the first four drivers out. 12 drivers remain. They go to Texas on Sunday. My least favorite track. I probably won't watch too much of this race, was being honest, because Texas as a track is just awful. But the rest of the races, like they have Talladega coming up next, Charlotte Roval after that. They have some really good racetracks for the rest of the season. Only 7 races left. So this season is rapidly coming to a close. And here in a few weeks, we'll have a champion for the 2022 season. Not really sure what's going to happen here, because the last 3 winners were all non-playoff drivers. Chris Buescher won at Bristol. Bubba Wallace won the week before. Eric Jones won the week before that. So we've had 20 different winners this year in NASCAR, which I believe is a new record for the Cup Series. It's shown how the next-gen car has succeeded in its purpose to create more parity and more competition. But there are some other issues with it in terms of safety that have come up. So hopefully NASCAR is able to balance that better, because, yes, well, the competition is great. You want to first and foremost, you got to make sure these drivers are okay. So, but I think there's some really positive stuff to come out of this year for the sport of NASCAR.
Oh yeah, and I remember 2 years ago I was down in Bristol. I covered the Xfinity series and in the truck series, and it was a awesome experience. I really had a good time down in the Bristol watching the races. It was an amazing experience. So I bet this weekend was great as well. So that's it for episode 42 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Probably we'll be back with some more action from the Brazilian side because after Brazil plays two friendly games that probably nobody cares much about, football, soccer comebacks with full strength, and we're gonna have the recap of the Tennessee-Florida game and much NFL. I'm Gustavo Tomazeli.
Hope we have a Gators win party next time.
Yeah, hopefully it will be a gator. I remember eating the gator meat when both played in Neyland Stadium last time. I hope now the Gators got to the Vols got to devour some gators on the
Smoke
field.
them and barbecue. Throw them in the river. Let's go. Let's go Vols, baby. Let's go get it.
Go Vols.
Go Vols.
For Nicholas Hill down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I'm Gus Tomazeli in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil. You've been listening to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports podcast, the only podcast that talk about sports in America and in Brazil. And have a good time. I'll see you next pod.
All right, see you next pod.